you hear about rural EMS systems out in like the Midwest and like the East, and some of those smaller station departments, they run 3-4 calls a week. That's like an average Tuesday morning for me. Like we're usually hitting 5 by noon, and we're hitting 10 or 12 by the end of the shift, 24 hours. So, I'm grateful that I get all that experience, but sometimes I just like to eat my lunch.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become the best possible versions of themselves and to strive for overall health, mental health, emotional health, physical health, all of the healths, without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who've been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time somebody shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. What up, beasts? Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm hanging out with Matt Gould. In the last decade since I've known him, he's gone from child rockstar to EMT, and now he has accepted a job as a firefighter in Colorado. In this episode, he talks about his long journey of what it took to get here and some shocking stories he has had during his experience as an EMT. Please note, the end of this episode has some detailed, gory stories, so if you get easily queasy, feel free to turn it off at the end. However, if gory shit excites you, there's no judgment here. Keep listening. As always, I hope something lands with you today. I hope something you hear tugs on your heartstrings, and or I hope you laugh. Ladies and gentlemen, I am with Matt Gould, or do you prefer Matthew?
Either one.
Matt Gould. And he is currently one of our guitar players in our band called Bad Example, formerly known as Rewind, formerly known as the Kegels.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, surprise. And since I've known Matt, since I've known you, you have been child rockstar, EMT, and now you're going to be a firefighter in Colorado. Is that correct?
Yep. That's facts.
That's facts. So what I'm interested in is all the in-betweens.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
The fun stuff.
The fun stuff. But first, can you tell my listener, just the one, who you are?
Well, right now I'm 25.
Are you really?
I'm 25, yeah.
Are you really?
I am 25.
I thought you were 22.
We've known each other for like 10 years.
That's right. You were 15 when I met you. Little baby Matt, as Megan called you.
Yeah, I was like 23 when I joined the band.
Holy Lord. Okay. So you're 25.
Yep. I am an EMT, and I am on my way to be a firefighter at Colorado Springs Fire Department. Oh, what do you want to know, I guess?
Like, who are you, man? Like, who's inside of Matt?
I ask myself that pretty often.
I think that's a question we ask ourselves quite often. Who's inside of Matt?
Tim? I don't.
No, but like.
No. I don't know. I'm just me, I guess. Like,
yeah.
Married. It's nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's very nice.
She's definitely been a nice addition to our band.
Yep.
Yeah, her presence. Because she is a present. How did you two meet?
We met at work, actually. She's an EMT too, and I met her on her first day at the hospital, and there's this guy that we had to restrain to the bed because he was going all crazy, and I walked in there and I grabbed the restraints, and they use different restraints than we do, right? Ours are just like Velcro. They just go over the wrist and you just Velcro them on, and it's like, cool. They have like these ones that tie to the bed. So, I'm like standing there, I don't know what I'm doing, and she comes over and she's like, give me those. And I was like, okay, I've never met you before, but all right. And so we sat there and we're trying to tie this guy down, and the whole time we're just going back and forth, just bantering, and it was pretty funny. And I talked to her afterwards, just like on a friendly level, and she was like, yeah, I just started working here. I'm going to phlebotomy school, where they draw blood. And she was like, I'm gonna need volunteers. I was like, for what? And she's like, well, I need
for what?
She's like, I need volunteers to come get blood drawn because like I have to prove that I can draw blood. And I was like, I'll think about it. And then a few days later, I was like, couldn't stop thinking about her. And so she saw me and she's like, so you gonna come volunteer? And I was like, sure. So I showed up at her place right after I got off work at 7:00 in the morning, and I'm dead tired. And I walk in there and just drop my arm on the counter, and I'm like, here you go.
Funk.
she, sticks a needle in my arm, pulls a bunch of blood out. And I was like, all right, now I'm going to take you to breakfast. She was like, what? I was like, yeah, let's go. So I'm going to take you to breakfast. She was like, okay. And that's how we met and started talking.
Yeah, I remember being in Tim and Megan's kitchen, and we're like chatting, like making small talk, getting to know each other. She grabs my arm. She's like, ooh, you have nice veins.
She loves to do that. There's one in my right arm that she calls her vein because it's big and squishy, and she likes that.
Big and squishy. Yeah, I didn't really know your guys' story till I was actually at your wedding, and somebody was talking about it. Who was talking about it? Maybe it was one of your toasts?
Probably.
Yeah. So that was cool to like be at your wedding and learn about your relationship at the same time.
Yeah. That was a fun time.
That was
wedding.
cool. Yeah.
I think my favorite toast was my brother's.
I don't remember his toast.
He gets up there and he goes, I've known Matt my whole life because he's my brother. And the 10 things that I can tell you about him, and he picks up one of our napkins that had the 10 facts about us listed on it, and he starts reading off the napkin. And that was so funny.
Yeah, that's funny. So tell me a little more about how you got into, I was going to say fireman school. I'm old, you guys. Come on. Like, what made you interested in becoming a firefighter?
Well, I guess I got to go back to the start then, because when I got out of high school, I wanted to be in IT. I wanted to be a tech guy, right? And I knew a guy, he was a good friend of mine, and he was like, hey, I heard you're interested in IT. I've got this small business, and why don't you come work for me, and I'll teach you how to do that stuff, while you get enrolled in college and all that fun stuff. And, and so I started going over to his house. I went to his house like twice a week. I would work a lot from home because I just do everything on my laptop. And it was fine. It was good stuff. I was learning a lot. And then one day, like, one of the companies that we were working for was just like, hey, we don't need you guys anymore. And like the whole thing fell apart, and I ended up losing my job. And so I was like, I sat there and I was like, well, I don't want to, base the rest of my career on whether or not somebody just feels like hiring somebody else for whatever reason,
Yeah.
Especially with tech, it's super saturated as a field. So I was driving home one day and I passed by a fire station, and I've got firefighters in my family, and my grandfather was a firefighter and my uncle was a firefighter. He just retired a few weeks ago, actually. And I was looking for a way to get in shape, get fit, and stay fit for the rest of my life. Like, that's something that I've always wanted to do, was, be in good shape.
Yeah.
And so I was passing by the fire station and I was like, I think I want to be a firefighter. That sounds like a good idea. So I went home and I went on Google and I searched firefighter jobs, and the Los Angeles City Fire Department happened to be hiring at that time, which fire departments open up for applications in time periods, right?
Okay.
So they'll go, we're going to be open from, this day to this day, or until we hit X amount of applicants, right? So if you're a smaller department, you might open for a couple months or until you hit 500 applicants.
Okay.
If you're a bigger department like Los Angeles City, you'll open for a long time, and you'll stay open no matter how many applicants you get. And, a lot of people will flock to those bigger departments. So I was like, oh, cool. Los Angeles is hiring. Let's see if I can get a job there. I submit an application. I go take their test. I pass. I get an interview and I sit down with the captain, and he's like, asking me the interview questions, and I'm nervous. Like, I clearly didn't think I was going to get this far. I was just writing it out, see what happens. And he's like, how many stations are in the city of Los Angeles? I don't know. Who's the chief? I don't know. And he's asking me all these questions that are specific to LA City. He's like, what do you know? And I was like, I don't know a whole lot. And he goes, how did you get here? And so I told him about how I submitted an application and all that. And he goes, and you got to the interview? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, holy crap. So, he gave me some advice. He's like, you've got heart in you, kid. He's like, reapply. When we reopen, he's like, but while you're waiting, go get this test done, a physical fitness test done. Mm-hmm. Go to EMT school and get your EMT. He's like, and get in shape. He's like, clearly you've got some kind of brain in you if you made it this far without having any other prior knowledge. I was like, okay. So I left and I scheduled that physical fitness test, and it kicked my butt. It was hard. And it's not even the harder of the two tests that are out there. It's the easier one. But, you put on a weight vest, you climb the Stairmaster for, 3.5 minutes, and then they make you run a course. And I had never done stairs for 3.5 minutes straight, I don't think, let alone with like 75 pounds attached to you. It's hard, and so I left from there a little defeated, but not like I was set, like I was committed to being a firefighter. So I went to EMT school. I started taking fire science classes at college, and, I was doing pretty good. And then I got a job working for AMR, and that's where I've been for the last coming up on 3 years now, working for AMR. I have passed the physical.
3 years already.
Yeah, it's...
Jeez.
And it doesn't feel like it, because I think I've only been working consistently in the 911 system for like 2.5. Because when I first started, I got sent on a deployment to Louisiana, and that was fun. Get out there and save the world.
Yeah.
I did absolutely nothing, if I'm honest with you. Like, I went and sat in the disaster zone for like, what was it, 2 days. They put us on alert the second day because they were like, the president might come and walk through the city and see all the devastation. And I was like, that's cool. I guess I better shave. And then he ended up not even coming, and we were like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then we woke up on the third day when we were supposed to be leaving, and they were like, surprise, here's a 5-hour transfer. Take this patient over to this place. And we were like, okay. And my partner was a paramedic, so I had to drive. And getting woken up at 5:30 in the morning to drive 5 hours is like, it's a dream come true, let me tell you. It's absolutely what I thought I would be doing with my life. So, and then after that, we sat in hotels from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and just helped out anybody that needed it. I met a lot of really nice people down there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a good time. And then I came back and I started working up in the Antelope Valley, running in one of the busiest 911 systems in the United States.
Shocking.
And it's getting worse. I don't know what to tell you, but like stabbings and shootings are a daily occurrence now. It's like
gross.
When we used to hear gunshot wound go out over the radio, people would be like jumping at the opportunity to take something like that. Now it's like, another gunshot wound went out. Stabbing went out. It's like,
yeah,
it's still an exciting call to get, but Like it just doesn't have that like shine on it that it used to. That sounds bad. Like,
no, I know what you mean though.
I don't want, like, I don't enjoy people's suffering.
You're not like, yay, somebody got shot.
Yeah,
no.
no. It's very much like, it's just cool that I get to use my training in that kind of way. Like, you know, you hear about rural EMS systems out in like the Midwest and like the East, and you know, some of those smaller station departments, they run 3-4 calls a week. That's like an average Tuesday morning for me. You know, like we're usually hitting 5 by noon, you know, and we're hitting 10 or 12 by the end of the shift, you know, 24 hours. So, you know, I'm grateful that I get all that experience, you know, but sometimes I just like to eat my lunch.
Yeah.
So anyway, back on point.
So EMT was nothing you ever planned on doing.
Actually, I tried to avoid it as much as I could because I wanted to be a firefighter. I wanted to spray water at fire, and, you know. Yeah. And you don't realize how much education goes into that.
Spraying fire on water. Wait,
I took
the other way around. Water on fire. There we go.
I think if you spray fire at water, that's a really interesting fishing technique you have there. It's not even something I would expect to see that out here too. Like
somebody spraying
like over
fire
at like
on
Lake
water.
Palmdale, just like in the Fin and Feather Club, just like, like no. So you know, there are 8 classes that I took. I think at Mount Sac. I think it was 8. But like everything from combustion to like building construction. Like,
wow.
When I saw that one, I was like, huh. But I mean, then they talk about it and it makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess it does. You know, knowing the construction of a building is pretty important when you're about to walk on the roof with a chainsaw and like 80 pounds of equipment on your back, you know? Like, because right now I weigh 210. I've actually broke 200. It's nice. That's how I know I need to cut. But, you know, I'm 210, you throw, you know, bunker gear is 45 pounds. And then the tank on your back is another 30. You know, that's
like 800 pounds.
It's like 75 pounds. Yeah, 800. Totally.
Totally 800 pounds.
You know, and then with the rest of the equipment that you're carrying, it's like, you know, like somebody of my size would usually end up weighing around 315. And then you put me on a roof of a building that's actively burning. Like, it's like, I used to wonder, like, why do firefighters fall through roofs like all, you know, pretty often? Well, that's why, because
all the weight.
You're heavy up there, you know? But, you know, I didn't really want to be an EMT. I didn't have any interest in medical stuff. I was like, you know, I just want to be a firefighter. You know, I want to go out there and work out and, you know, be a hero and
slide down a pole.
Yeah, that's the best part. Some stations have slides too.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Usually the big city ones, but, you know, and then I had a sober realization that firefighting is only about 5% of what firefighters do anymore with all the prevention out there, like sprinklers and stuff. So, you know, 95% of the job is medical calls.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that because I noticed fire trucks going to scenes that don't have any fire. And I've always wondered how that works.
So it's different in each area. So out here in LA County, right? You ever see Emergency? The show from like 1970?
No.
Oh, it's a fantastic. So back then when they had just invented the squad truck, right? Which is like a pickup truck with a big like box on the back, and it carries a bunch of paramedic supplies. And basically, so the way we do it is we're the ambulance, we're the transportation, right? So an engine shows up and a squad shows up on ALS calls, advanced life support.
Okay.
Right. So if somebody's having something really serious, like a stroke, or they passed out for some reason, or they're having a heart attack, right? Like a paramedic will show up because they have the tools to assess that stuff, right? It's hard to tell if somebody's having a heart attack if you don't have a cardiac monitor, you know?
Yeah.
So they show up and we end up taking them to the hospital, right? The engine shows up because manpower, basically. You know, it doesn't take much manpower to lift 90-pound grandma off the floor.
Yeah.
But when you've got 650-pound dude fell down in his bathroom, like,
Yeah.
unless you're going to blow out the wall, there's got to be some way you've got to get him out, you know? And
Yeah.
so you end up with like 5-6 firefighters on scene and then 2 of us. So that's, you know, that's a pretty decent amount of people. You know, you can get a lot done. And if you need more, you can bring back more, you know, but, so yeah, fire department shows up. In other areas, the fire department is strictly like lifting. Like they're just there to help. They're not really, because in LA County, they're medical authority.
Okay.
So they can make the decision on what a patient requires, like, you know, if they need to be transported, like they can make that decision. Mm-hmm. In other areas, it's the ambulance that'll be medical authority. And then, you know, then the fire department shows up and they're like, hey, we're here to help. It's kind of, it's an interesting system. EMS is not that old. EMS is only about, like, standardized EMS is only about 30 years old.
Wow.
They've had EMS has been around for probably about 60, 70 years now. But like the standardized version of EMS that we know right now has only been around since like the 90s.
Wow.
So, you know, I was like, oh yeah, so I guess I have to be an EMT.
I guess I will.
So I went to EMT school and I did pretty well. And then I realized that I kind of liked it. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this medical stuff isn't all that bad. And so I was like, but I didn't want to lose focus on being a firefighter.
Right.
But I also kind of wanted to go to paramedic school, you know. So I decided to go to work and get some experience. And officially speaking, the recommended way, and like in California, it's the only way, is you have to be an EMT in the 911 system for either 6 months or a set amount of hours.
Okay.
Full time if you're working 6 months. If you're part time, you have to work a set. It's like 1,200 hours. And I was part-time, and I met my 1,200 hours because I went on deployment, and I worked for 2 straight weeks.
Oh, no.
So I applied for paramedic school because I was like, hey, you know what? Being a paramedic, you get a better shot at getting into a fire department. So why not? And I got denied. And I'm glad I did, because I did 3 weeks of paramedic school at the beginning of this year, and it's hard. Like, you're learning so much stuff. Like EMT school is like, is their bone sticking out? Wrap it up. Are they bleeding? Make it stop. Are they breathing? Breathe for them. Like,
yeah.
You know, that's EMT school. Like, you have to know a lot of medical stuff, but you don't have to like know a lot of in-depth medical stuff. Paramedic school, they're teaching you what medications to give. You know, they're teaching you advanced airways, so like you can intubate people in the field. You know, they even have like some really serious stuff, like if their like lung is deflated, you can do I think it's called a needle thoracectomy or something, and we call it a needle T because that's a long word to say when you're trying to. Hey, you do a needle thoracectomy, you know, it's like, no, just say do a needle T, you know. Yeah. But you stick a needle into their lung through their ribs and you just reinflate their lung.
Is that what they do in the movies where they're like, ah, and they take the like whatever device it is and stab them in the chest, and then all of a sudden it's like
yes and no.
I mean, obviously that's not how it really is, but I mean, is that what the movies are trying to portray?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, some movies like Pulp Fiction, like you would never do an adrenaline shot to the heart. That's dumb. Like, yeah, it cracks me up because when I was a kid, I was like, oh, that's cool. But now I'm like, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Like,
don't do that.
You know, or like you can do a needle crike where they put it right into your trachea. You know, there's like a little hole like right there in your trachea. So if you have an airway obstruction up in the above your trachea, like you can start a little hole right there and then you can breathe through that. Like paramedics can do that.
That's cool.
It's scary, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah.
So I applied for paramedic school, and at the same time I was getting through the process with LA City, and I was in background investigations, and they were like, it kind of felt like I was going to get in there. And then I had also applied for Colorado Springs because my friend was working there, a friend of mine that I worked with at my station. And I had also just visited, so I was like, I really like that place. It was really pretty. My friend works there. You know what? let's throw in an application and see what happens. You know, like that's kind of how the fire department is. It's not like applying for a regular job where you apply and then they answer you.
Right. You just kind of apply and then
you just kind of shoot applications everywhere. And like LA City will tell you like apply 2 or 3 times, be in their system, be in their process like 2 or 3 times concurrently. Because if you don't get it this year, you might get it next year. And if you don't get it next year, hey, you might get it next year, you know, the year after that. And it's like, you know, I'm not a big fan of throwing in that many applications for the same place, but you know, I was getting through cities and I dropped an application for Colorado Springs and I was like, let's just see what happens, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I had passed all their tests and everything. I did an interview for them and I passed that. And then I was like, drove out to Colorado and like did a polygraph and all kinds of fun stuff and like 2 psychological tests, you know, it was like a big deal. And then I'm at school, or I was at work on the day that they said that I would get notified on whether or not I got the job. And I was like, so you know, you're getting this notification on this day, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's the day. I sat at work all day. I had mad anxiety all day. And he calls me at 7:30 p.m. And I was just like, ugh. But, you know, it's like Colorado's an hour ahead. So it's like 8:30 for that guy. You know, I felt kind of bad. You know, they had a lot of people to get through. And he calls me and he's like, hey, you know, we had, 50 spots and 80 applicants that we were seriously considering. He's like, we really like you, but we don't have the space. Can we put you on a list? And I was like, sure. Yeah, put me on a list. No problem. He goes, okay. How soon before the academy can I contact you? He's like, I can put you down for up to the Friday before. And I was like, put me down for the Friday before. I was like, if I get the notification the Friday before the academy, I will drop everything and fly out there. I don't care. And he was like, okay.
Nice.
And then 5 days later, he called me back and he was like, hey, do you want that job? And I was like, absolutely, I do. I was in the middle of school, you know, and then I had this whole thing where, you know, do I continue with paramedic school? And so I called him and I was like, do I continue and transfer later, or do I, you know, just drop out? And they were like, well, we're going to pay for you to go to paramedic school.
Oh.
And we're going to pay you on your salary to go to paramedic school. So do what you want. And I walked into the director's office and I withdrew immediately. I was like, thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
So, and that's pretty much where I'm at now. You know, I've just been working out a lot. You know, it's a job that I don't think most people realize how strong you have to be to do that job.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how strong you have to be to do that job until you're doing it. Like, it's not like, you know, a lot of people go to the gym and they work out like bodybuilders. You know, I'm going to do bench press today. I'm going to do chest day today. You know what I'm saying? Firefighting is a full body strength workout and endurance. And they like the closest you can kind of get to it is CrossFit, but even that doesn't do it justice. Like, you'd have to do CrossFit with a weight vest on. You know? Yeah. It's rough. And firefighters are basically like full-time professional athletes. The only difference is from athletes, right? When you're a baseball player or a football player, like, you know when game day is. Right. You know, firefighting, you don't know when game day is.
You're on your toes.
Any day, like, there goes the fire, you know. Yeah. Guess what? The whole building, the whole skyscraper downtown is burning right now. Have fun, you know. And it really brings it into perspective too when you think about the weight of the gear. Like on 9/11, right? The 343 firefighters that went up into the World Trade Center before it collapsed, like, they climbed by stairs 80 floors.
That's insane.
80 floors. It's absolutely, like, you know, I can probably climb like a solid 20 right now with weight, and I'm like winded. You know, and I know it's probably a mix of adrenaline and other stuff, but it just shows like New York is on a whole nother level for one. Yeah. You know, but just like the strength and endurance that's required, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
So what does your typical training look like when you're at the gym?
I'll split mine up, right? I do push pull legs. Right? So one day I'll go and I'll do push, just like chest and all that, triceps and stuff. And then I'll do pull for like my biceps and my back, and my push is part of shoulders is part of push too. And I'll do legs, you know, and at the end of every strength training session, I'll run, or I'll do stair climber, or I'll do both, or I'll go swimming, or I'll do some kind of cardio, right?
Yeah.
And I push myself to my absolute limit, because like you have to be able to do that and then some, right?
Yeah.
And I try to follow like the mentality of like, you don't know how far you can, or you don't know how much you can truly do until you do it, you know, until you get to the point where you thought you would stop and then do some more, you know. And there's a group that I follow called Fit to Fight Fire. They actually, like, their Instagram page is amazing for me. Like, they post like daily quotes, they post workouts that you can follow, like, you know. But those are, the guy that runs it, one of the guys that runs it, they actually work for Denver Fire. So we're going to be like right there. I'm going to be like within 2 hours of my hero, you know what
That's
I'm saying?
cool.
But it's just like, you know, you see a lot of guys, like, firefighting is a very physical thing to do. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just like police officers, like, you look out into the fire crews and there's always some overweight guys and stuff where it's like, you know, they just got complacent. You don't run a lot of fires in this area. You sit around a lot, you know. It's easy to fall into the routine of like, you know, I'm going to wake up, you know, we're going to drill a little bit, you know, have a little bit of a training session, you know, with our equipment. And then I'm going to eat some ice cream and take a nap, you know. I'm going to watch a movie, you know. And I'm not saying that all firefighters are like that, you know. And a lot of guys know that they need to be in shape. You know, a lot of guys really take it seriously. But, you know, I just don't want to be like that weak link, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That kind of training, I mean, CrossFit is crazy and not recommended for your average Joe. But then when you said put the vest on and do CrossFit, I mean, but for being a firefighter, you're literally training for something, for a possible event that might come up. It's different when people just go to CrossFit just to go do CrossFit. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Or train like super intense and insane, just for the sake of it, to say, look what I can do. But like you're in a completely different, it's a totally different beast, because you're doing it because you have to. It's
a mindset for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like when I get there and I'm working out, it's like I try to remind myself, like, I'm not doing this for me. Like like I was saying, a lot of people go to the gym, they do it to look good, or they do it because it makes them feel good. Mm-hmm. And like, that's totally cool. I'm so down for that, you know, like, you know, whether people work out or they don't, like, you know, as long as it makes you happy, you know, that's kind of my thing. But when you're in a professional setting where you should be fit, like, you know, I'm doing it for the guy next to me.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for the guy that's that's trapped in his house that can't get out, you know, because it's full of smoke and fire and he can't see and he's panicking because his whole house is on fire, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to be the guy that shows up and can't carry him out.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy that shows up and can't do his job because my gear is too heavy. You know what I'm saying? And I also don't want to be the guy that, like, I watch, you know, my brother in front of me go down and I can't pull him out.
Yeah.
You know, it's very unpredictable setting that you're in there, you know, like, fire is a scary thing.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you think about people who die in fires, like, you know, smoke inhalation, burning to death, like, that's scary stuff, you know. And it's weird. I never thought I'd be in a position where, because when I was a kid, I was kind of scared a lot, you know, like, not a lot, but I just didn't have, like, the courage to go do things. Like, if it hurt, I didn't want it. I was like, pain sucks. I'm just gonna
avoid
pain at all costs. So I was skinny. I never worked out or anything because I was like, oh, working out hurts. Why would I do that? You know, I'm sore for like 3 days afterwards. That sucks. I'm not going to do that, you know?
Yeah.
But now it's like, I embrace it. Embrace the pain. Embrace the suck, you know?
Embrace the suck. Yeah. I mean, looking at the picture that popped up in my Facebook.
Was that yesterday?
Oh my gosh, little baby Matt. I'm going to pull it up right now. Hold on.
Dude, yeah, I know. I was so skinny.
I know.
I was like, when I was 17, 18, I was like 6'1", $120. Like, I was skinny. Like, I looked malnourished. And I wasn't. I ate a whole lot. You know, it's not that I never had food. Like, I definitely always had food, but oh man.
And then when you walked into my house today and you're like, you're bigger than last time I saw you, but I think you're thinking it's fat, but you don't look fat to me. You look like you're ripped.
Well, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. But I mean, definitely I can see a huge difference.
Yeah. I think if I tried to put that shirt on now, I wouldn't be able to get my arms through those holes.
Just your leg?
Probably.
Just your quad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm glad I'm at where I'm at now. Like, weight-wise, strength-wise. Like, yeah. I feel better. I remember when I was like, because my parents started going to the gym when I was like 11, I think. And I was too old to go to the kids center in 24-hour fitness. So they got me a membership, and my dad was like, you're going to start working out. Because when my dad was a kid, he played football.
Oh, okay.
So he was like, oh, yeah, when I was your age, I was huge. You know, I used to be, you know, I used to play football. And I was like, yeah, I got little noodle arms. Like, you know what? I'd go to the gym, and I'd start working out. And, you know, I'd be like lifting the weight, and I'd grab like the 15-pound dumbbells. I'm like, man, this is heavy. Now I'm like, I'm gonna grab the 45s. Like,
nice.
You know, it feels good.
Nice. I just got to 40 on my rows, like the bent over row. Yeah,
the bent over back rows.
The single arm. Yeah.
Oh, the single arm.
That's a lot for me.
Yeah, I think I could probably hit like 50. I think. Nice. I don't know. I usually do.
You should try it before you leave.
I usually do the machine
downstairs.
Yeah, I do it downstairs. That's cool.
I'm definitely curious if you're willing to talk about it. A couple things. How being an EMT has affected your emotional health, I guess. Like, has it numbed you? Because I'm sure you see things that people don't see every day. And then the second part of that question is, what is the worst thing that you've seen being an EMT? And I'm sure you get that question all the time.
I do. So I'll talk about my emotional health first. Being in EMS, you definitely deal with a few things that people you don't see a lot of. You know, most people, I would say, probably don't see. I've actually birthed a baby.
Nice.
And I was actually driving about a month ago when my partner delivered one. So I've been in the presence of two births, right? And I've seen countless people die or, like, you know, already dead.
Yeah.
I've seen just lots of stuff, you know, child abuse, domestic abuse. I've seen attempted suicides, you know, and like, I've seen car accidents where it's just like, you get in there and you're just like, how are you alive? Like,
oh, wow.
You know, you don't even recognize, what's the make and model of the car? Metal in a ball. Like,
yeah.
how do you describe that, you know? And, it takes a toll on your mental and emotional health, you know? And so to combat it, I actually became a critical incident stress management counselor. It's a special course I went through where now I'm a peer counselor at work. So we have a therapist on call, right, that you can call and talk to.
That's cool.
And that's fine, but there's a stigma in EMS about talking to those people. Oh, I'm tough. I can get through it. You know, and I was that way too for a while. You know, I don't need to talk about this. Nothing affects me.
Yeah.
You know, just a job. You know, trying to be all, you know, Chuck Norris about it. Yeah. Trying to be all Magnum PI, you know. And that works for a while, but, you know, then you get stuff where you're like, you think about it later, and then it's like, ooh, maybe I wasn't okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, but then it's like, do I want to talk? Do I want to like open up my feelings about it? Like, ugh.
Yeah.
So I went to this training because there was a few calls that I had where I wish I had somebody there to talk to, and I didn't. And like I had somebody there to talk to, but I didn't want to call the therapist. You know, so I was like, they opened this opportunity up for us there at AMR, and I was like, I jumped on it. I was like, heck yeah, let's go. And it was some really interesting stuff. And while we were there, you know, training as a group, it was like I opened up about some of the calls that I had been on where, you know, I wasn't okay with what happened.
Yeah.
And like I walked out of that second day, I was crying.
Yeah.
Like, this is bad. You know, like if I'm going through this, I can't imagine what other people are going through, you know. And I've used my training a few times. It's you know, it's nice, but it definitely takes a toll, you know, and a lot of people don't realize how much of a toll it takes. First responders suicide rate is like 50% higher than all other job fields. The divorce rate in EMS and fire and police and the first responders, like, you know, public service world is like something like 65-70%. You know, you have to be really strong in this job, like mentally, to be able to handle it. And you also have to know when to get out. You know, I think a lot of people stay for way too long and then they're just burnt out. You know, you get a lot of compassion fatigue too. You know, everybody starts out as the EMT that's like, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to, you know, help. But then like the 9th time that you run on the same guy for being drunk in public, it's like, why am I here? You know, like, what's the point? Like there's a lady down the street that got hit by a car, but I'm on this guy. Like where's the medical problem? You know? And it's like, it's really easy to fall into that trap of like, you know, just not feeling compassion for some people because you've been on them so many times, you know?
Yeah.
And especially out here in this area where you have a lot of people who can't afford to get doctors, you know, they can't afford to get the right medications. They can't afford to, you know, get the care that they need. And so they end up using 911 as a crutch, which is not what 911 is supposed to be used for.
Right.
But, you know, it's either that or death. So what do you pick, you know? And so, yeah, you have to kind of remind yourself over and over, like, hey, maybe this person deserves to have some compassion too, you know?
Yeah. Remind yourself of the humanity.
It gets hard.
Yeah.
Because especially when you're running sleep deprived, you know, we make just above minimum wage here. That could change soon depending on some law stuff that's going through. But right now we make just above minimum wage. A lot of us have to work insane amounts of overtime to make ends meet. You know, I work some pretty nuts overtime sometimes. I've worked 60 hours straight, you know, running 10, 12 calls a day. That's a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes even more than that, you know. And it gets to this point where like you're so sleep deprived that you're just trying to make it, you know, you're just trying to get through it. And there's like, you know, there's ways that we can rest. You know, there's a tag that we can take called fatigue where you get a guaranteed 4 hours of rest, you know, but then it kind of messes up everybody else, you know. So if I'm calling fatigue and I'm the only unit here, then somebody has to come cover for me. And it just shortens everybody in ambulance. So, you know, if it wasn't busy enough already, guess what? Now you're down a unit that could be out running calls. So no, people don't like it when you call fatigue. And that's, you know, it makes it even harder because like I've fallen asleep at streetlights. I've almost driven off the freeway a couple times, you know, like, but then you slap yourself a few times, like, I'm awake. And it's like, you know, you have to remind yourself, like, you can't care for somebody if you can't care for yourself, you know?
Exactly.
So it gets tough. Are
the hours like that because there aren't enough of you, or is there like a limit to how many they can have?
Well, contractually, so we have to work 24-hour shifts, right? And our schedule it's called a Kelly schedule, and it rotates, but it matches us up with the fire department, right? So I work on A shift. There's A, B, and C shift. I work on A shift, And it's nice because I get to know all the firefighters that I'm working with on A shift in my area.
Mm-hmm.
So I cover LA County stations 24s and 37s, right? So I know those guys, like, we're friends, you know, we all know each other. They can trust us, you know. We end up working with a lot of different stations too, because we're so, like, AMR only wants to staff the absolute, like, minimum in order to maximize profits, right? So LA County Fire has, like, I don't even know how many stations out here. They've got quite a few of them. But we have 9 for the Antelope Valley. And at each station, we have 2 ambulances, except for 2 stations where we have 1. Lake LA and Acton each only have 1 because they're not as busy. But I mean, when you're popping that many calls a day, it's like two units at my station is nothing.
Yeah.
You know, we'll get calls one right after the other, and then somebody from East Palmdale has to come cover our area, or somebody from Lancaster has to come cover our area. And it's, you know, hitting level 0 where we have no ambulances available whatsoever in the valley happens all the time. You know, they'll call out over there, any available units from the hospital to take a code 3 call. And it's like, I've gotten calls from Palmdale Regional Hospital all the way up in Lancaster. And I've got a 20 minute ETA, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, it sucks because the compassion in me is like, if this lady's having a stroke, it's going to take me 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
And the golden hour is the first hour of anybody having a stroke. You know, if you see somebody start having a stroke, the best way to get them back to full recovery is to get them in within an hour.
Yeah.
You know, or imagine having a heart attack for 20 minutes because the ambulance is 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, God forbid, a cardiac arrest. You know, 20 minutes, you know, when somebody goes down in cardiac arrest, we only work on them for 30 minutes.
Before you stop?
Yeah, before we're like, hey, you know, this is...
Call it?
Yeah. I mean, unless there's rhythm change or something, you know.
Right.
But if it's straight, no rhythm, no pulse, nothing for 30 minutes, it's like, okay, you know, like, we can't work on them forever, you know. Obviously, nothing's changing, so...
Yeah.
You know, but if we're 20 minutes away...
I always worry about that because, you know where my parents live in Agua Dulce.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepdad, Mike, he had a stroke. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how long it took them to get there. But then he wasn't even treated. Like, they kept calling it a mini stroke. And then, like, 3 days later, they're like, oh, no, it was a full stroke. And I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, don't worry. We were treating him for a full one anyway, just in case. Anyway, that's another story. But yeah, the fact that they live up in the hills and he has a lot of health issues, I don't know how close people are. I know there's a fire station down the street from them. Mm-hmm. But, yeah. Just
So, I've worked at that station in Acton. And I've been pretty deep into Agua Dulce. And, like, on average, I'd say it would take us probably about 12 minutes, which is not bad.
Yeah, that's not
all
bad.
things considered. The trick is that most people in Agua Dulce want to go down to Henry Mayo Hospital because it's so much better than either of the hospitals up here. So then you're looking at like a 20-minute, you know, transport time. And that's where it's like, you know, our ambulances only go up to 75 miles an hour. So when you're ripping through the country streets, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm going like 40, 45, 50, you know, like as safe as I possibly can with, you know, people in the back. You hop on the freeway and I can do 75, you know, but yeah, those rural areas, they're really pretty to live in.
Yeah.
But if you have a medical problem, like,
or lots of them,
you know, you're going to need to be careful, you know?
Yeah. So can you tell me, if you're willing to talk about it, the worst thing you've ever seen on one of your calls?
I'm not going to talk about the worst thing that I've ever seen because it was foul, and I don't think I don't like thinking about it.
Gotcha.
You know, it's not like I would honestly. It's just hard to say. You know, like it's hard to put out there like that kind of like it almost seems like straight up evil, you know?
Yeah.
I've been on scene for a few things where I didn't actually see anything, but like knowing that that's right inside the house was pretty bad. Like there was a murder out here a couple of years ago where like it came out for us as a gas leak. Mm-hmm. And it was like this dad he had gone crazy or something, and the firefighters went into the house expecting a gas leak, and they found 2 decapitated teenagers on a bed.
Oh, I think I remember that.
Yeah. And then there were a couple small kids that were starving, like they hadn't eaten in like a week, you know, and there was a few other people in the house, but I guess the guy broke the gas line to try to blow up the house to get rid of all the evidence and stuff, and they stopped him. You know, there was another murder here. It was actually on the day that I had the worst call ever. It was the worst call that I ever had was right before, but the call right after that was for a guy who came home and shot and killed his 5 kids and his mother-in-law, and then went to the sheriff's station and turned himself in.
Wow. And you had to go into that scene.
Well, I didn't actually. So my partner went in. Okay. I was outside setting up the gurney, and then they all came walking back out because I went to walk in, and she was like, "Hey, no, you're good. Like, there's nothing we can do." And it's like, oh, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, the battalion chief comes out and he's like, "Hey, you know, you guys might want to take notes on what you saw, what you remember, because this could pop up in court in a few years or whatever." You know, so it's stuff like that. We have to be careful to protect ourselves legally too.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing that I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes, it's a 2-way tie. Like, again, this is not the worst thing I've ever seen.
Right.
But the second worst thing that I've ever seen is a 2-way tie. One time I saw this guy that he was out in past Little Rock, you know, like out in that area where it's really rural.
Yeah.
And he had a house and the garage door was open, and his like son's friend called because he drives by every day, and he noticed that the garage door was open like every day for a week or 2. And he was like, yeah, his garage door is not normally open that much, you know, so I don't know, maybe something's wrong. And we went walking up, and the guy had been dead for like 2 weeks.
Ooh.
He must have had like a heart attack or something, because his keys were still in the door, you know, and he just fell back and died, and he was bloated.
Was he in the garage?
He was in the garage, and it was the middle of summer. Like it must have been like mid to late July, and it was bad. Like the bloating, the smell, the flies, like everything that you expect out of a dead body was right there. And I was like, wow, this is atrocious.
Yeah.
I think the second worst thing, the other thing was this guy tried to kill himself by stabbing himself in the neck, and there was just blood everywhere. And he was just standing there on the sidewalk, you know, we're like trying to, you know, pack his neck with gauze, and we're just like, all right, let's get you on the gurney then. Let's get you to the hospital, you know. But it's just like, you know, you walk up and you see all that blood, and you're like, you don't realize how much blood is in the human body. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and it cracks me up because then we get calls like, I had this guy cut his like finger one time with a pocket knife, and there was some blood, and he's all, I think I'm dying, man. I think I'm dying. So I think that's like all my blood on the floor, right? And I was like, no, not even close. And he's like, how do you know? And I'm like, I've seen all the blood of a human body on the floor before. I'm like, it's quite a lot. It's like, you know, and it's weird that I can say that too, you know?
Yeah.
When I was 16, I never thought I'd be like, yeah, I've seen pretty much all of the blood in a human body on the floor.
Yeah.
Out, you know? And it's interesting stuff, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
The thing that I guess we like made me all weird, like nauseous and stuff, like,
yeah,
because I'm pretty good. Like, I can keep a straight face through pretty much anything.
I've noticed.
Smells are pretty bad for me. Like, blood just smells like pennies. But like the smell of like just unwashed, like body parts, you know, because some of our patients, like, they haven't showered or been bathed in like a month. And all they do is lay in bed, and they only get up to go to the bathroom, and then you're like, you get them and it's like, woo, you know, but I have to keep a straight face because I'm trying to be professional, you know?
Yeah.
But the one thing that I wasn't expecting to see, at one time I was at AV, and some guy came in and he had accidentally cut off like his fingers with a bandsaw, and he came walking up to the ambulance bay, which you're supposed to go up to the front.
Yeah.
But I think he saw the ambulances and he was like, I'm going to go there. Can't blame him. Right. And so he comes walking up with all of his fingers in one hand, and he's holding his, you know, now fingerless hand in his other hand.
Yeah.
Or that, however you want to interpret that sentence.
I meant what you knew.
And so he comes walking up, and I'm like, did you come by ambulance? And he's like, no. And I was like, let's get you inside then. So we go walking in, and that wasn't even the worst part. The part that got me was they immediately walked over to him when they figured out what was going on, and they had the pain medication, right, like morphine or whatever, and they stuck it in his wound, like right where his finger was. And I was like, ooh, I'm gonna walk away. Like, that was gross, you know.
EBGBs.
Like, I empathize with people on pain quite a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Like, when I see something like that, like, it makes me like feel like I feel it, and I'm just like, ooh, like, yeah, it sends chills down my spine. I had to sit down.
Yeah.
That was like the most nauseous I think I've ever been at work.
So putting the worst you've ever seen aside, what is the best thing you've ever seen in this work? Like, have you ever seen a miracle where you thought somebody was for sure gone and they came back, or anything like that?
I think honestly, probably one of the best things I've seen is childbirth. It's pretty gross when you look at it like head on, but like it's just a beautiful thing to have happen. Kind of sucks that it happens in the back of an ambulance.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm sure every mom, you know, pictures like, oh, I'm going to be in the hospital, or, you know, at home in a kiddie pool or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, people do what they want, but, you know, just the back of the ambulance, I think, is one of the most unexpected places. I think the next most would probably be in an airplane, but
yeah,
you know, but, you know, to be a part of that is just like, you know, somebody told me one time that we get to be there at two, like, in a lot of cultures, two of the most sacred times in life is at the creation of life and at the leaving of life.
Yeah.
And I get to be there for both of them. And it's just like, it's a blessing, you know. It's like to be a part of something like that. And even like seeing people like leave this world, you know, like to know that like somebody called us and they trust us, you know, to do everything that we can. But it, you know, when we can't do it, when there's just nothing else that we can do, you know, to be there, and like it's a really big thing, you know, for some people. Childbirth is definitely one of the nicer ones. Like I find like one of my favorite things is just trying to make an impact with people. You know, I've had people like drug addicts that were trying to go through rehab, and, you know, they wean you off with medication.
Yeah.
And he, you know, there was one guy that I remember, he sticks with me. He had been in a rehab facility and they were weaning him off, and they finished his medication cycle and he wasn't ready to be off of it yet, but he really wanted to be off the drugs. And so I was like, hey man, you know, we're going to get you over to the hospital. And he's like, they're going to kick me out. And I was like, well, let's see, you know, let's get over there and we'll see what happens, you know. And the whole time I'm just talking to him, and it was really clear to me that he, you know, he really wanted to be off the drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
And so getting to like be impactful like that, you know, was a big thing for me. Or like there was one guy that I had, this is actually kind of a funny story. I had this guy that he got into a big argument with his girlfriend and tried to drink bleach. That's not funny. Right. He spit it out, thankfully. You know, he was mostly fine. But when that kind of thing happens, there's a special sheriff's team that shows up called it's the mental health evaluation. So it's the MET team, right?
Yeah.
Shows up, and on the MET team is a buddy of mine. he's super nice guy. But they're like, so they're sheriffs, but they're not really like he's a sheriff, but they have a psychiatrist with them, or psychologist or whatever. And, you know, they sit there and they, you know, they talk to people and they figure out like, you know, why are you trying to kill yourself?
Yeah.
You know, do you want to actively kill you know? And obviously, you know, he didn't want to go to the hospital, but in that situation, EMS permits us to like the rules, the protocols, like when somebody wants to do that, they're considered a danger to themselves. And so they're not thinking in their right minds. So they have to be brought in involuntarily. Mm-hmm. And the sheriffs are the ones that write that involuntary hold, the 5150, as you know, it's popularly known. This guy's kicking and fighting. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. You know, and he starts yelling insults at us, at the sheriff specifically. And we get him into the ambulance. The sheriffs decided to tail us because it was like, you know, them sitting with us in the back of the ambulance, like it wasn't going to fix anything. Mm-hmm. Like the guy wasn't going to calm down. So, you know, I sit down and I start talking to the guy and he's like, I'm going to be there. Do they have to put me on this hold? And I was like, well, you're going to talk to a doctor. They'll go through some tests and stuff. You might not have to be on a 3-day hold. You know, they're just going to talk to you. That's all they want to do. They just want to talk to you in a controlled environment. You know, and so he starts calming down and he starts like, man, it's just, I just don't, man, like, you know, nobody gets it. And I was like, I'm here for you. Tell me. And he goes, you want to hear my whole story? And I was like, we got 15 minutes till we get to the hospital, pal. I'm like, unload, you know, I'm all ears. And so I sat there and I listened to the guy for 15 minutes, you know, till we got to the hospital. And he just told me everything, just vented it all, you know, about everything, you know. And I was just like, that's awesome, you know, not, you know, that he was able to open up to me like that and that I could be there to listen to him. And we get to the hospital and he's like, man, I'm sorry about earlier, you know. I was like, it's no big deal, bro. I was like, we've all been there. You know, we've all had our moments where we're just losing it, you know? And I was like, but, you know, we're going to get you in here. We're going to leave you with the sheriffs. I'm like, you got to be nice to them too, man. I'm like, they're just doing their jobs, you know? And he's like, yeah, I know, man. I'm like, it was tough, you know? And I'm like, okay, you know? So I'm thinking I've got him in a pretty good headspace, right? Like, we're good. We wheel him into the hospital and the sheriffs come walking in after us. And he turns around and he goes, hey, are you the sheriff that I was talking to earlier? And he goes, yeah, what's up? And he goes, man, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about the way I was talking to you earlier. And the sheriff looks at me with this look that's like, what did you do to him? And I was like, I just smiled and I gave my report and he walks over and he goes, how did you do that? And I was like, I just talked to him. I just listened, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that like a lot of the times, most people, they just need someone to listen to them, you know? Yeah. So it's like, it's nice, you know, being able to do my job and like be there for people, I guess, you know? So
that's awesome.
That's some of the good things I've seen.
Yeah.
I guess.
So at the end of every episode, I ask everybody one question. And that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
That's hard.
That's what she said. I'm sorry.
There it is. Let's see. One piece of advice that I could give to the world. Honestly, my piece of advice would be to chase your dreams relentlessly. Don't give up, you know. I think one of the biggest things that happens to people these days is they set their sights on something, and when they don't get it right away, they quit. You know, I've been chasing firefighting for like 6 years. You know, there have been times where I failed big time, and I felt like, oh, this sucks. I'm never gonna get there. You know, I'm never going to achieve my dream, and I'm just going to, you know, you just got to pursue it, man. You know, like, don't stop, you know, relentlessly pursue, you know, make it your purpose, you know, wake up, chase it. You know, somebody told me one time, it was like, if you take 1 hour out of every day to do something, you know, granted, if you sleep 8 hours, that's like 16 hours that you have left, I think, if my math isn't wrong. But out of those 16 hours, if you take 1 hour to do something towards your goal, that's still 15 hours you have left in your day to do whatever else, you know? And, you know, that's 365 hours out of the year that you just put towards something. You know, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, so whether it's working out or doing whatever, you know, chasing your dream somehow, you know, you can do it at any point during the day, but like just chase it, you know, don't stop. That's my advice.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Gould signing off. Until next time.